Welcome back to another edition of the Wolff Den. I'm the host, Matt Wolff, of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Joni Marie Iraci to the show. Welcome to the Wolff Den. How are you?
Thank you. I'm okay. How are you?
Doing great. We're going to talk about Vatican Daughter and books, but we're going to start, as we always do, with just give us a quick introduction of who you are, and we'll get to it.
Joni Marie Iraci. I'm a novelist. I'm a retired registered nurse who always liked to write. So I'm not one to put my work out there unless I arm myself with credentials. So I went back to school in my aging years and got an MFA from Columbia with a bunch of young people. So that was interesting. I learned a lot. I read 1,200 pages a week while there and fueled my writing. I had started this book. I wrote another book first, and then I had started this book about 10 years ago. I go to Italy a lot. So I was standing in St. Peter's Square looking at the Basilica thinking, I wonder what's going on back there. You know, they had a whole bunch of scandals. And the muse hit. I got the title first. And I jotted down some notes while there, and I put it aside for about, I would say, 10 years.
Okay.
And then I went back to Italy in 2019, took a long walk, 88 miles through Rome and Venice. I know Venice pretty well. Rome, I didn't know that much, so I got the lay of the land. And then I got COVID while there before nobody knew what it was, which was October of 2019. I was sick. Came back, pandemic hit. I sat and treated it like a job, and I wrote 8 hours a day, and I did research, took me down a whole bunch of rabbit holes, found out about true life papal kidnappings that really happened in 1859. So that fueled the story, and it came to fruition. You know, marketing is another issue, but I like to write.
Well, here we are. Let's go back to the start, because your first profession was a nurse, and you did that for quite a long time. Was that something you wanted to do growing up?
Yeah, when I was 16, I got a job in the hospital, so I had that bug. You know, you never really stop. I retired, but you never really stop being a nurse, because I'm living in Florida right now, and everybody's got an ailment, so they're always at my door. I feel like putting a sign outside, not a clinic, thank you very much, but yeah, there's always.
I'm in Florida as well, so I know.
There's not one person in this neighborhood that doesn't have some ache and pain they have to tell me about. So it seems to be the topic of conversation if you're over a certain age. But yeah.
Now that you're not an actual still a working nurse, you don't want to help them with their problems.
Well, I do to a certain extent.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's hard, you know, there's not that many doctors down here, so that's another issue. But so I always had the writing bug. I started writing as a teenager, you know, bad poetry, teenage angst, you know, on paper. But that was a whole nother land. And then, you know, I wrote my first book. I wrote a lot of short stories. I think starting with short stories and submitting to literary journals is really the way to go if you want to be a writer, because at least you build up some sort of resume.
So that's what you were doing. You were just writing for the fun of writing and submitting it to.
I didn't submit a thing until I got my MFA. I didn't.
You waited.
Yeah, I waited. I mean, you wrote as a nurse, you know, you wrote about the patients and whatever in the charts and things like that. But no, I never really wrote a story per se until I went to Sarah Lawrence first, and that's a writing college in New York. So I wrote a lot there. And then, you know, I actually got jury duty and accepted to Columbia on the same day. So I thought the Columbia calls you up to admit you. So I thought that was a joke. I thought there was somebody joking, you know, I didn't expect to get in. And so I had written 35 pages of a court scene for my first book, and I had to rip it up because it was based on Law and Order, you know, pretty much, which is not true. And it was I was the only juror that said, "Oh, this was such a wonderful experience." The other jurors hated me, but
So you went to jury duty.
I did 3 months criminal court in.
Really? I
Yes.
think if I go, I would like to get to criminal. Quick funny story about jury duty. I wanted to go, and I got called, and I told my work I'm going. This is many, many years ago, and just randomly happened to go in my desk drawer, and I find this piece of paper that said I had jury duty yesterday.
Oh gosh.
And I call it up, and it said everyone was dismissed. So and now they've never.
Well, that worked.
It just worked out. But funny thing about jury duty is, I guess technically you can tell them you never got it because it's not.
Yes, you can throw it out and they'll never know.
Yeah. So they'll keep maybe inviting you, but
I was on federal criminal court, and while I was on sitting juror, one of my fellow jurors got jury duty while she was on the jury. I said, "Aren't there any other people on the planet?"
So you wrote. What was your stuff? What was your writing about? Jury and trial. You said
that was a story. That was a novel about a girl who escaped a situation, an abusive situation, and I put the story in there about the trial.
So there was a lot of trial information in the story.
Yeah, it was about.
How close was that to what you experienced?
Well, it was close because the judge, after the case was over, it was grueling. It was the Trinitario gang. It's a horrible Dominican gang. Who knew? There's 40,000 members. And it was enlightening. I never saw so many drugs in my life, and I'm a nurse, But so the judge, after it was over, I said, I'm a writer. I'm writing this story. Can I ask you some questions? He goes, yeah, my wife's a writer. So he was great, and he just the lay of the land of the court, how they stand and how they present it. I learned a ton. So I ripped up my 35 pages and I started over. And
well, let's wrap up the nursing thing, because the good thing about you being a nurse is that you met your husband through your work, right?
It was on the day. Yes. Yeah, I did.
So at what point did you decide I want to be a little bit more, take my writing more serious? That's when you started to apply to some schools.
When the kids were still bungee corded to the nest, but pretty much could get in the house by themselves. Okay. Then I decided I'll go back to school and it's my turn. So yeah, that's what I did.
But you are writing as you're going to school, or no? You wait.
Yes. Oh, it's very much every day was an assignment of write. Undergrad, they give you prompts. You read a book and they give you a prompt based on the topic. And then you get to Columbia for your MFA, and then you're on your own. You write whatever. And then they rip it apart and critique you to death. It's kind of like being crucified every day.
What was the best thing you learned at writing school?
The best thing I learned was not to take criticism so seriously, because it was brutal, but I learned, everything helps you. I'm editing for somebody now, and I'm trying to tell them, feedback is what you want, because it improves your writing. Depends if it's constructive. I mean,
you got to be. I mean, that's on the other person, right? With anything, give feedback that's not mean-spirited.
Well, there are a lot of haters out there.
Yeah, so trying to be constructive criticism. Was there something that you thought you knew that it kind of got flipped when you got to school? Like you thought, hey, now it's like, wow, I was totally wrong.
Yeah. I was light years older than everybody else. So I had buckets of life experience where the younger people, I won't call them kids, but they were, didn't, a lot of them they were brilliant writers, but not always had something to write about. Not all of them. And so I helped them with life, and they wrote a lot of medical. Everybody thinks they can write medical stuff, and they weave in all this diseases that didn't exist, or, outlandish symptoms and things like that. So I helped them with that kind of thing. And they helped me with technology. So
Yeah, they're more creative. The younger people are probably a little bit more creative, like wild imaginations, which
Oh
could
yeah,
help in writing if you're, depending on what type of writer you want
right.
to be.
A lot of dystopian, end of the world kind of stuff, and a lot of dates gone horribly wrong, dates that turn into aliens, things like that.
Now, your book, Vatican Daughter, is based on true events.
I don't know. Perhaps,
Okay, so
perhaps
people have.
it's plausible. Well, as I
Do you have? Do you have to? That's a good question. Do you have to designate whether something's fiction or nonfiction?
Well, sure. I mean, if you can write based on true events, this is totally fiction. However, as I was going down the rabbit hole of research, I came upon the true life story of papal kidnappings. So, and actually, a professor at Brown wrote a book about it, about this one particular case, and he won a Pulitzer for it. So I contacted him, and he was very gracious and helped me, understand the story. So I weave that in. I have one of the characters pull his book off a shelf and tell, the mother who's looking for her child, because the child's kidnapped by the Vatican, and to avoid a scandal, which is kind of what they do in real life. So,
Do you think it's tougher to write nonfiction than fiction, because there's no wrong in fiction, right? No one can tell you, oh, that didn't happen that way, or that's not really relevant, or.
Well, I think a lot of the nonfiction is written by experts, like somebody who's a psychologist, or they're an expert in their field, or they're a NASA scientist, or, whatever. And in those cases, yes. Or, the deluge of political books that are out there. Everybody's an expert on some political stance. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, a lot of self-help books people are interested in, but fiction kind of takes you away from all that. It takes you away from reality, and you can imagine, a different world, maybe.
You prefer fiction?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've written essays and things like that, and I just started writing on Substack about the experience of writing and the experience of going back to school, things like that. People are interested, some people, but I don't know.
You talked about Italy. You're Italian? The
No,
families?
my husband's Italian.
Husband's Italian.
Hmm.
So going there is just
But
because that's where he's from, and it's
his background is Italian. He's, been here forever. But I don't know. Once you go to Italy, it's kind of, you get hooked. I'm very hooked on Italy. So
yeah. I was in Rome and Firenze, as they call it, right? And then we did some day trips. I'd love to go back. The problem for me is that there's so many other places I've never been that it's hard for me to sort of justify going back there.
I agree, but I can't not go.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, you have a tie to it, which helps.
I've been to Venice multiple. I found out he has family in Sicily. We never knew. So they came through, social media, of course. So we have to go visit.
So you're in Italy. You're by the Vatican, and the title comes to you. Does that happen a lot? I think with writers that a title comes and then you kind of.
Yeah, I'm one of the few writers that get the title first. Yeah, that's just the way it is. They get the title, in fact, but not always. So I wrote the next book, and that's a continuation of the story. It stands alone, but it's a continuation of the first Vatican story. And I woke up with the first line in my head. I had no intention of writing it as a series, but I woke up with this first line in my head. So then I just banged it out.
But you had the idea with it, and it sat with you for 10 years.
The first one, yeah. But the second one is done. That's already done. And that took a couple months. But I have a third one. Interesting. So I do research first. I get the premise, and then I start doing research. So I started doing research, read this fabulous book for research. And in the middle of the book, there was a line that said Secret of Secrets. And that's the title of Dan Brown's next book coming out in September. So I'm terrified that it's the same premise, and there's no way I can compete with him. But I'm not so sure because his is set in Czechoslovakia and my story is almost 100% Greek or of origin. So I don't know. We'll see.
Different enough. So, we talked about Dan Brown before we came on here. It was a book that I read in, 2 days a day during a hurricane.
Yeah.
Not much of a reader, but tell us your affiliation with Dan.
Okay, so I'm a member of the Authors Guild, and I guess I donated money to them for something, and the then director saw my bio, and she was fascinated with my trajectory, because I went back to school and I did all this and whatever. And so she contacted me and we became fast friends. And then they have this New England kind of tour every summer where they go from author's house to author's house. And Dan Brown was one of them hosting. So I got to go. And oh my God, he was like my Justin Bieber, he answered the door with his dog. It was surreal. And there were about 30 people there. Some of them were kind of weird, but he was very cool. I was the first one there, and he, was tell me about your novel and very interested. And his house is the embodiment. We're not allowed to take pictures, but it was the embodiment of the Da Vinci Code. He has codes and trap doors and, all kinds of crazy.
What did you ask him? Did you get to ask him
Yeah, we asked him a lot of stuff. But the interesting thing is, I know in one of your podcasts you mentioned the riddles. They're actually based on the fact that, he grew up on the campus of Exeter in New Hampshire. His father was a history teacher in high school, and his mother was a musician. So they never gave him a present outright. So like, Merry Christmas, here's your present. Instead, he got clues on how to find the presents. His whole childhood was that.
Fun, I think.
Exactly. And it fueled this amazing talent of writing this sort of genre.
You get inspired by his stuff? Is he one of the authors that you kind of...
A little bit. Not really. I got inspired by a professor that I had at Sarah Lawrence, who was an art historian, and he was just a hoot and a half. He had all kinds of, he never worked the audio equipment, so he was like always cursing and whatever, but he taught the origins of Christianity and a lot of the, like the man-made sort of patriarchal stuff, and the holier than thou behavior that is contrived. Let me put it that way.
Right.
So it was fascinating, and he really fueled my not that I didn't have it to begin with. I was
right,
kind of,
it's just someone who
I went to 12 years of Catholic school and witnessed a lot of hypocrisy as a child and also as an adult, working with priests who were jailed. They went to jail for dirty deeds. Let me put it that way. So yeah, all of it comes.
Well, it's interesting. But did you read a lot? You wrote
Yes.
when you were young. Did you read a lot growing up?
I started reading at the age of 4.
Okay.
So yeah, I read a lot. I'm a little burned out now because after reading 1,200 pages a week at Columbia, like my eyes were bleeding. So
what were you drawn to when you were younger?
I had a lot of science books. The first one was The Microbe Hunters, which is now out of print. I don't know why. I was 11 and I read that, and it was so fascinating about, Madame Curie and things like that. So that was one that stands out. But Nancy Drew. I'm dating.
Catcher in the Rye was
Catcher in the Rye.
I haven't read a ton, and I didn't like reading.
A pretty book, you could handle it.
Yeah, I didn't like. I have a copy of it actually here, and then there was a movie about J.D. Salinger, which I haven't seen yet.
I haven't seen it now.
Yeah,
a friend of mine actually, her book was just made into a movie. I'll give her a little plug.
Sure.
Fabulous writer. She writes reality. She's my vintage, so she writes, about real life, and I think a lot of her work is kind of true, based on truth, but it's fiction. The Friend It's a movie now, and it's about a dog. The dog should get an Academy Award. Oh,
It's
it's
called The Friend. Where can we watch that?
The Friend. I think I don't know. I really don't. Online. It's online now. I mean, it was in the movies briefly. It's with Naomi Watts and Bill Murray. It's
Oh
great.
yeah,
It's fantastic.
I haven't seen it, but I saw a thing about.
She won the National Book Award for the book in 2017, which, yeah, it's great. It's the Great Dane in that book should be.
Yeah, I saw. I think So it's funny because I don't read a lot, but I watch The Daily Show,
Okay.
and one of the things that they do a lot is bring on authors of books. So I do know a lot about books, and I know a lot about movies, even if I haven't seen it or read it.
She was one of my professors at Columbia. She's amazing. Absolutely.
Definitely. I remember seeing a clip of him and the dog. It's a big dog, right? A huge dog.
Great Dane, and it's so talented.
Yeah.
My dog's just laying here,
Crazy, right? The way these animals can.
It's so cool. Yeah. So anyway, I have the next one ready to go. I'm going to submit that in the fall, and we'll see.
With the 10 years, I mean, you wait 10 years to write this thing, but how much are you thinking about it?
All the time. You never stop.
But you've written a book before, so why didn't you write this? What was?
Why did I write it? Because I was in school, which is grueling hell. You had to write 15 pages a week and submit it and be, ripped apart, and then you have to go revise and redo it. And my thesis was my first book. So one of the former editors of Harper's Magazine was my thesis reader, and he took forever to read it, and you can't graduate until they finish critiquing it. And he wrote, "Oh, Joni should roll up her sleeves and redo this," or say blah 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 blah. And then I did. I rewrote that.
So you really knew you weren't going to write, as you said, until you were done with school.
Well, you write during school, but then
the book. The book.
No, I didn't write it while I was there. I didn't even submit any part of it. So I didn't write it at all until I came back from Italy in 2019. And I just wrote it gun ho. Sometimes I look at it and I think, where did all this come from? But it did.
What's the difference between a bestseller and there's so many talented writers out there?
Well, the bestseller,
it's a little political, right? People have money to throw at it, and
the New York Times bestseller list now isn't what it used to be. Now it's like, somebody buys a whole bunch of books. I mean, I shouldn't tell this out of school.
No, I know they know.
Dan Brown's editor bought a whole slew of books.
And they do that with music albums too. You buy albums, give it away, you include it as part of something. It's
right.
A lot to do with marketing.
Celebrity and who it's all about who, and getting an agent too. That was a nightmare. Trying to get an agent, like if you're over 30, it's like,
that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, when you start to talk about it's never too late. I mean, writing is, you can write as long as your mind's working. You can write compelling stuff until you die. Of course,
but getting an agent is a whole nother thing. And then, there's a lot of stuff like, for example, the Gulf Coast Writers Association down here. I joined that, and it was pretty frightening. So, a lot of people think they can write, and then the self-publishing aspect of that opened the door.
Anyone can publish.
Anybody. So, I had an agent for 2 years who really kind of wasted my time. But, and then I just gave up and I went the indie route. And, I queried a lot of agents, but they weren't interested. So I don't know why. They write not for us. That's what they say. That doesn't help you, And, one wanted the story rewritten according to how she thought it should go. And
you should be a writer, not an agent.
Yes, exactly. So that was the end of her. And, that's how, so I gave up. But then I found my publishers in the UK, and they're not actually in the UK. They're actually global. So, for example, their base is in London. They have the publicist is in Wales. There's the one who runs it is in Quebec. I mean, they're everywhere. So I did a podcast in Australia. Like they just put me all over the place. And so they're great though. Like they're almost, a friend of mine got published through Random House in the top 5, and I'm not seeing as much exposure that I've had, with them. Like, so I'm pretty happy so far. They did ask my input for the cover, which was frightening because it's AI, and you might as well ask me to walk on water as to work with that. So I said, I can't do this. Oh yeah, you can do it. You can do it. And so I said, no, imagine your grandmother. I don't want to be a snarky American because they're very polite, the Brits. So I said, I want to be a snarky American, but imagine your grandmother trying to do a cover for a book. And the editor wrote back, I'm from Vermont. So anyway, I got to meet him, actually. It was fun. But yeah, so everything's
happy with the success of the book.
It's very early. It just came out in May. So
rarely.
Did a lot of I got some significant sales, they say, in April because it came out earlier in Europe. But I don't know.
You do a book tour. I mean, how do you market?
I do it all through people like you. That's how it goes. I don't know if it's gonna work. I don't know. I went to Vermont for a book event. I never did that before. I went for a book festival, and we had tornado warnings. Like in Vermont, I thought that was a Midwest tropical thing, but apparently not. So that one day was canceled, and there's a lot of tire kickers, they want to know the whole story, give them the synopsis, and then they don't buy a book. So, and about the first American Pope, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, that's.
I did a podcast in April, and the podcaster said, listen, I believe this entire novel except American Pope, that's never going to happen.
And then it happened.
Yeah, I know. Imagine.
So what was your reaction when that?
I almost went off the road. I was driving and it was on the radio. I was like, you've got to be kidding. I just, and in the scene in the first chapter, I think you could read the first chapter. I won't tire you out. But if you read the first chapter, there's the grumbling of the other cardinals, from different parts of Europe who are like, oh, an American Pope, surely
God. Kind of a non-American Pope because he has so much.
We went to Villanova. He's from Pennsylvania. Come on.
Yeah, but he doesn't lean in.
He'll live wherever he wants. It doesn't.
Talk about not leaning into your roots, in a sense. Like, do you lean into the story of you took such a long break and got in late in the game? Because you talk about how that might have hurt you a little bit, but I think that's an interesting story that people would want to.
What? About me? I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, that you got into this late in life.
Yeah, people are very interested in that.
Yeah,
like a lot of people are interested in that. Like, it was kind of brave to go back. I had a 17-year-old in my class in undergrad. So I loved it. It was great. I was everybody's mother, and then, I cooked for them and it was fun. But Columbia was different. It was a little grueling. But my thesis group, we ended up meeting every week for a year after graduation and working on our stuff. And then everybody's vaporized, their own way. But yeah, it was, I was a lot older. So
what's your writing process? I mean, authors have,
oh geez, yeah, my writing process. Well, life gets in the way a lot. It's distractions and stuff, but I'm always thinking about it. Right now I have a deadline of September to write a short story for an anthology. So I have.
Like, where are you writing? Do you have to go to a cabin with no one and shut everything up?
I'm in Naples, Florida. There is no.
There's not a lot going on.
There is no one. It's like a ghost town here.
You ever had the miso sea bass at USS Nemo?
Oh yes, it's fantastic.
It's so good. My wife and I go just for that. We'll go to Naples for a
Well,
trip.
tell me next time. I'll meet you.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's very good. Yeah, I'm trying to find a network down here, but I might. There's only one bookstore, Barnes and Noble. The rest are kind of, they sell seashells and books. So I'm gonna try to see if I could do a talk there. I don't know. You have to have your publicist call, but he said he would call, so we'll see.
I think you could write like a Naples base story. Is that
Naples? You mean about what? My neighbors?
something that happens in the Naples area? It could be anything, really. If you think I want to write about a kidnapping, I could write about a kidnapping that happens in Naples with a kid who's on vacation with their family, or you can write about a Vatican kidnapping.
I'll make you laugh. So I went up to Vermont, and Woodstock, Vermont is where we had this. Now I'm from New York. Okay. So that's a whole nother land. And we went up to Vermont for this book event, and Woodstock, Vermont, we went out to dinner, finished eating at 7:30, nothing on the street. Shut down, lights out, done. The bar was shut down. Not even sweeping the floor, done, lights out. Unbelievable. So I have to write a story. The topic is missing persons. So I'm gonna set it in Vermont. So I was joking with one of the people who was staying in this inn, and I said, I think I'm gonna set this story in Vermont. He goes, oh yeah, the person will go missing at 5 o'clock and they'll call off the search at 7, because it's like, it is the strangest. I don't know. I mean, what are these people doing up there? There's no life, none.
There's a karaoke bar in Naples, a sports bar that does karaoke, and then there's a decent comedy club there. So that's most of the nightlife that I even know of.
Yeah, they shut down at 9, but this was 7. This was like 7:15, 7:30. I'm serious.
We go to relax, get in a lazy river, and have some miso sea bass. And there's a good paella place. I'll send you there.
Okay.
Naples, but yeah, it's
the French on Fifth Avenue is pretty good. You're in Boca, right?
I'm in West Palm.
West Palm. Yeah, I don't know anything over there. It's busier over there, though.
Why Naples?
Why?
Yeah.
Because we had friends here. We came here. They since moved, but we came here years ago, and we've had the house here for over 20 years, but we didn't.
So you used to come back and forth?
Back and forth, but we just now moved here permanently, and it's different.
How much more writing do you have in you?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I'm done. I'm not dead yet.
So. You feel like there's a lot. You feel like...
Well, yeah, because I wrote a sequel to my first book, which I never expected to do. I haven't found a place for that yet. I'm not sure my publisher will take it, because they didn't publish the first book, but you never know. If this one does well and the next one does well, they might. But
what's your favorite movie that you've seen that was a book? I think there's a lot of people who say, like, I'd rather read the book, and once you watch the movie,
I don't usually like a movie based on a book, because I think the book is always better.
Yeah.
But they did a good job with The Friend, I have to say. And even Sigrid Nunez, who wrote it, said that, which is very rare. They usually don't.
It's why I don't read, just in case they ever unless they bring a movie out. I don't want to ruin the movie for
it's really the other way around.
Yeah, I know, that's what they say. Do you have a favorite author?
You've
read a lot of their stuff.
Well, obviously Sigrid, I've read everything she wrote, because she writes kind of like real stuff. She went to Columbia. She writes about New York, and I like that. I like Russian literature, which is really interesting. I like Pushkin because none of his work is finished. He died during a duel at the age of 27. So he has a whole bunch of stories that just stop. So I actually started a short story I went to Russia, so that was an experience. And I actually was on the train from Moscow to St. Petersburg during white nights, and looked out the window the whole night. And it came to me that, he appears to a journalist, and they finished the stories, while They're on the train. I never finished it. I have a whole bunch of that stuff kind of started that I have to someday finish.
Yeah. Have you read all the books behind you?
Oh, that's nothing. I've got about 1,500 books here, so
And
I've
read them
read
all?
pretty much. Yeah.
My wife belongs to a book club. Do you belong to any book clubs? Does that
Nah.
give you inspiration about how people interpret stuff?
Most book clubs are, they read current stuff or they read romance, and no, not unless I can be in charge. So,
How do you get best get feedback from what you're doing?
um,
Some people
one.
say,
Well,
like, honestly, that.
Dan Brown told me, he actually sent me a personal reel because I asked him on his Facebook page if what he does about bad reviews, and he says he never reads reviews because, if they're bad, you get upset, and if they're good, you get complacent. So he never reads them.
Yeah, I don't seem to read reviews a lot, even in life in general. My wife does, because I'm like, maybe someone had a bad day. Maybe their interpretation of dirty is different than your interpretation of dirty.
Sure, exactly.
Great. So I think just really trying to find individuals' experience with what they interpreted your work to be could be. It doesn't have to be bad or good.
Oh, yeah.
It could be
some people just don't get it at all.
Yeah.
I had to plug you in. I had one reviewer she just get the story, and she wasn't very nice. But
you could basically write your reviews anyway. Nobody even knows.
Well,
I know. I'm not saying you do. I'm saying there's a lot of it out there, especially with AI.
But you know what? Reviewers are so empowered by, oh my gosh, I have so much power to write a review. I can write, whatever I want. Lucky me, So.
What do you think about AI and the writing world? I mean, I could write a book.
Well, you know a lot about it. I
don't know that much about it, but I know I can write. I can put in a prompt.
Yeah, but that's like having. Well, they can tell. They can tell if a book is written. Like if you self-publish it, an AI book, good for you. But if you try to pawn that off on a publisher, they can spot it a mile away because there's no human emotion. It's a robot writing a book, So that's.
Yeah, it's interesting the way people can just come up with, because they're using it to sort of. I have my idea. I kind of know what I want to write, and not even necessarily a book, but I know what I want to write, but I can't exactly. Like, not everyone is good with words, and
they shouldn't write.
I'm saying more of like. Just to write a paragraph of who you are, or to summarize an event, or take all the thoughts that you have. It's a gift. Writing is a gift.
Absolutely.
I think.
I know. I had an old time professor. He was 90. He was awesome. He was former dean of Sarah Lawrence, and he was just so cool. He kind of took me under his wing. He was the world authority on Mark Twain. So I told him on the side that my great-grandfather actually met Mark Twain. I said, don't tell anybody there. They think I'm older than dirt. But and he told me he read everything I wrote at that time. He asked. Nobody ever asked. So he asked, and he said, you have a gift. You better get on it. So I got on it.
How many people don't realize that they have that gift? Do you think that they kind of find it?
Well, I think there's a fear of, going out in the world, or like going back to school to learn a craft, or not even to go back to school, but to enroll in a writing workshop. Even, like it's intimidating, and you have to put it. I struggled in the beginning because
I was going to ask how soon
people to criticize me, like I'm older and wiser.
How soon or how long did it take to know that you made the right decision?
I just loved going to school. I loved writing, so I loved everything. Every class I took involved writing. So, even if it was a film class, I had to write. Everything involved, a huge paper at the end of 27 plus pages or whatever. of critiquing a film or writing about a filmmaker or any kind of writing. So in addition to fiction, so that, I just love it. It's like, it's my thing. So yeah, and then Columbia was the same. So no matter what you took, you had to write. You had to read and read and read and write. But the first day of the orientation at Columbia, in addition to listening to all the spiels about at the time were very concerned about sexual harassment and all that stuff. So I had to listen to all that. I hadn't had a date since Carter was president. So I tried to leave the auditorium and they started screaming. I had to sit down. It was mandatory. But the fiction chair said, don't let the reading interfere with your writing, which I was just like, that's not something you say to young people because they'll never do the work. And I experienced a lot of that where they didn't. I don't know how because reading helps you be a better writer. Reading, so if you're not reading, then how do you sit in a seminar and discuss a book you haven't read? Like they're scrambling to read it on their phone, and it just kind of diminished the
experience. We had the
right.
Cliff Notes.
Yes.
Yeah, notes. Now you can get AI to tell you a summary.
They're very smart. The Columbian students. I mean, they're brainiacs. Yeah. I mean, I took classes that I was just like, oh my God.
What do you think life would have been like if you went directly into writing instead of nursing?
I'd be a lot thinner because I wouldn't be able to afford to eat. But I don't know. I don't know. I think every bit is a trajectory that gets you where you need to be. So,
but you think you could have been successful? And obviously, again, life lessons and.
I don't know. I thought Columbia would give me more connections, but they don't want to help. They don't help. I got Steve Berry endorsed my book. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a prolific thriller writer. He's a historian. He sells a book every 6 minutes. He has 25 million copies sold. And I contacted him when my book was still not submitted, not published. And I said, I have this book. Here's my bio. Here's my synopsis. If it's published, would you consider endorsing it? And he wrote back, sure. I was so blown away. And then when it was picked up by the publisher, a year later, I contacted him and I said, I have this book. It's Remember Me. And he said, send me the manuscript. I'll have it for you. And he did.
It would be ironic or naive if people acted this way, but is the subject of your book controversial?
Oh, sure.
So, I mean, is that the people who are devout might not be interested in something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a book club, a bunch of older women, much older. And one member is a friend of mine, and she asked, I went out there in New Jersey to do my little spiel about my first book. They're very informal, and the ladies won't read it. They don't even know what it's about. They just won't read it because it has something. The church is full of scandals. I mean,
I know, it's ridiculous.
Come on. Like, how naive are you? I mean, let's be real here. But yeah, so I guess
Genuine fiction, that's what they call it, right?
There are a lot of nitpicking people. I know you haven't read it, but there's some little teeny obscure little detail in the book that this former acquaintance of mine decided that was her focus. I go through all of Italy, it's a thriller. So to give the reader a reprieve from the thriller elements, there's the sights, the sounds, the smells, the ambiance of Italy, the food. And she picks out this little ridiculous thing. And now she's sending me newspaper articles about Pope Francis. I'm like, it has nothing to do. I mean, just I'm sorry, don't read, whatever.
Sure.
But, this is what you get. Dan Brown was sued by the Catholic Church. I don't get it. It's fiction. What do you, he was banned from Italy. I'm like,
that seems a little
Well, it hit a nerve, I guess. I mean, that's the way I look at it. It must have hit a nerve because
I
why
think you're doing something right if you hit a nerve like that.
probably, or you have a hater. You can't make it until you have a hater. But I think, like, I listened to an interview on the Conclave, that movie that just came out a little while ago.
Yeah.
And the interviewer said that Vatican stories are like catnip for Hollywood. And it's kind of like catnip for me because I think what's going on, like there's so many secretive things going, their archives are open, but not really.
It's like interesting if you would have started writing when you were younger, it might not have been about Vatican because you hadn't been to Italy and gotten.
Exactly. I mean, what would I have written about?
Oh, you would have found something.
Some medical stuff, like I wrote some medical, like medical.
Do you find that you have a very good imagination? Are you always?
Yeah, I've always got something percolating up there, but it's just time. I wrote, I have a website and there's a couple of stories I wrote on an airplane. That story's on my website. That's quick. You could read that. That's really short. It's called Distractions because, it's about a writer who I was on a plane coming back from Venice, beautiful flight. And all of a sudden the pilot comes on and, in Italian says somebody's sick. So we had to stop in Halifax. Why you would go to Canada when you're sick is beyond me. But anyway,
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. So I started writing this story about, a writer looking for her muse, and I weave medical stuff in there too. So, yeah,
It's on the website. Joni Marie Iraci.
Italian.
You say Iraci, but if you're going to spell it out, Iraci with a CI.com. Check out Vatican Daughter. Read it and let us know what you think. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everybody gets.
Okay.
You can spend a day with anybody in the world, 24 hours, but they have to be alive and you can't be related to them. And it can't really be anyone you've already spent time with. Who would you choose and what would you like to do?
Who would I choose? Oh my gosh. Anybody alive? I don't know. Probably Dan Brown, so I could pick his brain.
You've already met him, though.
I know. That doesn't count?
Yeah, I mean, let's get another one.
Another one?
That was too easy.
I guess Sigrid Nunez, because I learned a lot from her. I already know her. I can't do somebody I already know.
No, someone you don't know. It doesn't have to be a celebrity.
But they always disappoint you, like they're always a celebrity. I took care of a lot of celebrities as nurses. Trust me, they're all.
I just think when you get to spend 24 hours with someone, it's a different experience because you'll get to kind of. I feel like you get out of their act, whatever that might be, if they're famous or well known or a celebrity. I feel like that, but who knows? Maybe you're right.
Maybe the dog that starred in the has to be a person.
Spend a day with a dog in the movie.
I'm an animal lover. What can I do?
Yeah, that would be fun. Bonus question: if you were going to write a biopic, who would it be of?
A bio of I don't know. These are tough.
Who would interest you?
Another writer, probably. Maybe Steve Berry. I've never met him, even though he wrote for me. He's fascinating. He's a member of the Smithsonian. He's just fascinating. He bangs out a book like one after the other. It's fascinating.
Well, check out the website so you can read a little bit about of her stuff, and then it'll get you to want to read The Vatican Daughter. Again, appreciate your time here, and hopefully looking forward to seeing what comes next, and hopefully Vatican Daughter becoming a huge success. Predicting, it's like The Simpsons predicting the American Pope before the American Pope.
Isn't that amazing?
It's crazy how that works.
Kind of fluky. Well, it was nice to finally connect with you. Thank you very much.
We'll talk to you soon, and we'll have another episode of the Wolff Den probably next month. Talk to everyone soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.